How can parents transition to back to school routines of getting kids into bed at the right time? My next guest says it is possible with persistence and a plan. My next guest is Amanda Jewson. She is a pediatric sleep consultant with Baby's Best Sleep and a former teacher. Good morning.
Good morning, Jill. How are you?
I'm great. Sleep is sort of one of those subjects that is a constant in my life, so this is a good one. When you taught, what did you see at the beginning of the school year when it came to students and the way they were sleeping?
Well, it's funny. The beginning of the school year means a lot of excitement from both students and teachers. So, usually on the first day, everyone is bright eyed, bushy tailed, excited. And then by the second, third, and fourth day, we start to see the slump, the summer slump, where you see children, or, I taught middle school. A lot of those students are sort of slumped over, a little bit tired, a little bit restless. And it's usually because they're not getting the amount of sleep they usually need.
How much sleep does a child need?
That will vary based on the age of the child. So if we're looking at a preschooler or JK, I would say anywhere from 4 years old to about even 12, we're looking at 10 to 13 hours of nighttime sleep, depending on that child. So if, you're putting
That's half the day.
I know, it's a lot. And so a lot of parents are surprised to hear that, especially when I say, your 12-year-old could go and have 12 hours of sleep. And they say, how is that possible? But a lot of children need a lot of sleep to restore their brains and have them ready to learn the next day.
And that brings me to the question of what the lack of sleep does in terms of their capability to learn and to take in information.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing because as humans, when our brain knows that we are not sleeping, our prehistoric brain sort of takes over and says, oh goodness, there is a threat. We need to be awake because there is a threat. So that means we have trouble concentrating on more than, or just one thing, because our brain says we need to be paying attention to all the things around us to protect us from this threat. So that means we have trouble with concentration on tasks, on simple tasks. We see that for some younger children, actually overtiredness doesn't look like what we think it might look like. So a former kindergarten teacher colleague of mine said that one of her biggest pieces of learning going into the job is that overtiredness doesn't look like sleepy. Overtiredness looks like hyperactivity in young children. So that's things like lots and lots and lots of energy, maybe emotional outbursts, breakdowns, that sort of thing. So it can look like lots of different things. If you have an older child who is tired, I mean, that really just looks like a tired, slumped over child who can't really focus in the classroom.
And that's a challenge for the teacher to try and manage that.
Yeah, and I would say in my career teaching, middle school and high school, we always saw the Monday morning slump where our older students were sort of doing all their sports, activities, piano, this and that, and then by Monday morning, it's sort of their time to rest and kind of get back into some sort of routine.
So for parents who are listening and may have been on this summer schedule for weeks, how do they get the kids to readopt and change their sleep routine?
It will take a little bit of work and a plan, but it's totally possible. I would say that the one thing that you want to start off with is asking yourself how much physical activity your children are getting. It's hard to put a child who has a lot of energy to burn. So I would say early in the afternoon, maybe about 3 or 4, get them outside, lots of fresh air. It's still warm enough for swimming, swim, 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 get out all that energy. But then I would say after about 4 o'clock, we want to start limiting light exposure, which is kind of a tough thing in with the sun being up
Hmm.
until about 7 or 8 these days. But you want to keep your children inside, limit your light exposure, and then this is a tricky part because I mean we've talked about it this morning already. Technology is everywhere. We really want to limit our screen time. So limiting screen time to 1 to 2 hours before bed is going to do wonders. The blue light on our screen, our tablets, our phones, that can really interfere with our melatonin production. It can either, it basically disrupts it and stops it from happening. And melatonin is the body's sleepy drug that we produce naturally that tells us, hey, it's time to go to bed and you feel sleepy. If that isn't being produced, it's hard for your child to fall asleep. So we want to watch that. And then, of course, if you have a late bedtime, moving bedtime back by 30 minutes each day for about I would say every 3 days, we move bedtime back 30 minutes and get your child on board, reward them when they do the right thing. Talk to them, have reward charts, stickers. They're usually really on board when you make them a part of the plan.
How helpful is it to shift the start of the school day? Because we know that there are later start times for some schools, elementary age kids and teens in high school. Does that work for them or against them in terms of the amount of sleep they need?
Oh, this is such a topic I'm personally passionate about, teaching middle school and high schoolers for so long. I think for the later start date is great for adolescents and teens. And the reason for that is as soon as a child enters adolescence, it's really hard for them to fall asleep earlier than 11 o'clock. Their entire circadian rhythm and their body cycles change, and it makes it very challenging. So when I talk to my students and I ask them, what time are you going to bed? They're like, I try to go to bed early, miss. I can't. And so, if we think about our modern lifestyles, a lot of students are commuting into schools. They're getting up between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning. They haven't gone to bed until midnight or sometimes 1 a.m. And we're asking them to take on a full workload at school. So that can be really challenging. So I say later start times for older students, if we can manage it in our society of 9 to 5, I don't know how practically it can be introduced, but if it can, I absolutely recommend it for sure.
It's been great to talk to you. Sleep is an ongoing conversation in my life. As you know, the Metro Morning sleep routine starts quite early in the morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Amanda Jewson is a pediatric sleep consultant and with Baby's Best Sleep. She's also a former teacher.